Here is Hannah's reaction when she accepted her Emmy.
Jesus Christ on a bike, sorry. Oh my gosh, I'm not responsible for anything that pulls out of my face in the next 30 seconds. Jason, you've changed my life with this, and more importantly, my baby girls. And I will fucking work for you for as long as you'll let me, because I'm so privileged to work with you. I really am. Oh my God, I'm giving a speech at the Emmys!
I'm so thrilled to be able to welcome Hannah Waddingham to Q live from her home in London. How are you?
Hi, Tom. Do you know what? That made me tear up a bit because I haven't watched it back other than like immediately after, just to check that I hadn't made an absolute arse of myself.
Oh, really? What went through your mind when you were listening to that just then?
I have a lot of emotions. It made me tear up. It's a massive, 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 massive times 50 million deal to me.
What happens in that room when you win, when your name is read?
I think, well, for me personally, I had barely sat down. I had been sitting in that seat for about 30 seconds. Then it was, oh, yes, in the first category. And I was like, oh, God, we're up and, oh, God, it's us. Oh, my God, oh, look, there's 7. And I was thinking to myself, oh, this fantastic woman, Rosie Perez, Kate McKinnon. I was just like, oh, look at these ladies. Oh, and they've got all the screens down the side. You know how your brain's going, then they said my name. And I literally thought I was going to black out. And I got grabbed on the shoulders by various people. And honestly, I genuinely had not, as you can probably tell, prepared a word, because I thought there are so many glorious women in this category. Just go along and have a very nice time.
Oh, but there's something beautiful about that. There's something beautiful watching you truly be surprised,
God. Yeah, beautiful and slightly embarrassing.
What is the next day like after you win an Emmy?
Absolute shock. Myself and Brett Goldstein, that plays Roy, and Phil Dunster, who plays Jamie Tart, we kind of gathered together in our hotel and were a bit stunned. And then Phil had to go off to a meeting. Brett and I drove to the coast and sat on the beach, almost silent, watching the sun go down, not really knowing bear in mind, I was meant to have flown home, and he came into my hotel room and went, what are you doing? And I went, I don't know, I'm just packing. And he went, why don't you just stay? Why don't you just stay for another night and then go home tomorrow? And I went, can I do that? And he went, yeah, you just won an Emmy, for God's sake. And I went, I have just won an Emmy. So I stayed and we had dinner.
It's such a well-deserved Emmy, because Rebecca's such an interesting study in contrast. She's this powerful boss who's determined in the early days to destroy the one thing her ex-husband loves. She realizes she actually loves the team she now owns. She evolves into this leader whose power is matched by her vulnerability and by her kindness. And I've heard you say in another interview, and I was hoping you might be able to talk about this, that Rebecca is coursing through your own veins.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Ridiculously so. Even with you saying all of that, I feel myself flipping into her and her feelings, her neuroses, her strengths. It's a very weird thing. I feel like the line between me and her flips from one to the other very easily. And when people say, where do you want her to go, or what do you think about what the writers come up with and stuff? I had a very strong feeling about it in season 1 and would want to know her arc. But the more and more I play her, the less I want to know in advance, because we all don't know what's going to happen in advance, do we? So she is so much a part of me that I'm absolutely okay with not knowing until the moment comes. And it feels like that's what keeps her fresh and raw and believable to me, because my immediate gut reaction, how she would respond to something, comes through. It's a very weird thing. I've had it with a few other shows in the past, like stage shows, but this part on camera, yeah, she's mine. She's my baby.
Explain that to me a little bit more, in that you have such similarities with her, or that you sort of have a dual conscious that is also hers.
Yeah, I just feel like, I just felt like even when I was given the pilot to go and have my chemistry reviewed with Jason, I just knew who she was straight away. And it's almost like, it sounds really, like overly acty, and I don't mean it like that, but
look at
I
me.
just
Look at this
felt-
beard and tell me you can't go overly acty. Look at this.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean,
okay.
you know,
I'll
yeah.
be honest with you.
Don't worry about
When I read it, I thought it doesn't feel. When I read her, and then moving on through season 1 and even through season 2, I don't know how far anybody is, so I won't give any spoilers for season 2. But you know, particularly like episode 10 of season 2, even though her father hadn't massively been touched upon, I could see in my mind's eye his face. I could see in my mind's eye ages ago at how her mum should look, her family home, to the point where our lovely writer, Joe Kelly, rang me and went, right, you know who Rebecca is. What does her family home look like? And I was like, this, and this. And he was like, yeah, I'm down with that. Let's do it.
That's very spooky.
It is spooky. And it means that I don't feel like I'm doing a thing. I don't feel like I'm putting anything on it. I just feel like I know who she is, like an old friend that I need to serve.
And tell me the story here, because similarly spooky is that the role was sort of manifested by you, right?
Well, I had been working out in Belfast, shooting on Krypton, which I loved, for Warner Brothers and Sci-Fi. And then my little girlie got very, very poorly, suddenly, like literally overnight. And I was stuck out in Belfast and couldn't get home. And thankfully, she's fine now. And she was about 6 months later, or repairing at least. And in that moment, I rang my rep here and in LA, and I said, look, as much as I love the way things are going, I'm a mummy first. And my little girlie is 3.5. And as much as I do love everything, and long may it continue, and the gear change from theatre to TV, I'm grateful for all of it. But I need to take a step back and just make sure she's okay. And there was like collective shock and silence on the phone of it being right at the wrong time. And I stood in my garden that night and I looked up the sky and I just said, look, I don't usually do this. And I imagined that I was the only person on this round thing that we call Earth. And I just said, thank you so much for making my girl better. She is the love of my life. I won't go anywhere or do anything if you, whoever you are, whatever there is, if you don't want me to, but can I please ask that I might be able to do both? I'm a single parent. I would love to do both. Can I please ask if you wouldn't mind, keep her safe, but also let me be the best that I can be work-wise, and give me something that I can get my teeth into that's round the corner from my house, please, so that I can do both. And within 2 months, this job had come in. So I don't know. Maybe it's complete fluke, or maybe there's something in it that when you actually really channel what you would like to give and what you are grateful for, and that your feet are firmly on the ground, but you want to achieve the best you can in life, there's nothing wrong with asking for it, because it might just come back and say, well, yeah, do you know what? You're a good egg. Here you go.
And it did, hey?
Yeah.
Is it a half hour from your house?
Yeah. Yeah, Richmond's half hour from my house.
What about at this stage in your career? What did it mean to get a role like this?
Oh my God, everything. Because I mean, let's have it right. I've had the most incredible career on the West End stage and on Broadway, and done some really lovely parts, but always in a supporting capacity of not having the main storyline, or having a storyline to a point, but feeding into the central characters more so. And thankfully, all the people of whom I have been feeding into their stories have always been epic, brilliant actors, brilliant writers. And so I was thinking, okay, that's me. That's cool. That's more than so many other actors who I think are brilliant get. And then this came along and I thought, oh my God, this is something where she has her own trajectory. She is a main player. And even in like one scene, you don't really get it at the age, or I hadn't thus far. Here I am, 47, and I'm always very vocal about that, because I think it's so important for people in general, men and women in their mid-40s, to hear that it can strike later than you'd planned. And maybe that's the time it's meant to strike, because you have had ups and downs in your own life. And I genuinely don't feel I could have played Rebecca Welton before now. I certainly wouldn't have had the kind of selflessness and kind of humility to let people see the warts and all side of her. Yes, there's the glamorous side, but I don't mind that people see the lines and people see the puffiness and the genuine upset that I've had in my life, perhaps here and there, that I bring to it. And then the silliness of who I am in real life, bringing that to her as well. So I do think it's probably all happened at the right time. And I'm massively, massively grateful for it, which is why the first person I thanked was Jason, to say thank you for letting me along for the ride.
How do you get there? How do you get to that acceptance thing?
Acceptance
of yourself and, I mean, who I am is enough and all that.
Well, I think we all have that battle all the time, don't you?
Yeah. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, some days I feel like I win it a bit.
Yeah. And
other days I just think, oh my God, it's like, we all have those days where we feel like we're drowning a little bit. And you just think, okay, it's got me a bit today. And then the next day you pick yourself up and go, oh, do you know what? I've achieved quite a lot today. And we all have it. And that's what I love about Rebecca as well. I love that you see all of that, often not just in one episode, but in one scene. That particular scene in season 1 where she's trying to tell Ted for the millionth time that it was her that caused everything. And then she goes, no, come on, pull yourself together. And quite a lot of that I was left to ad-lib to get myself where I needed to go. So she thinks she's walking out of the room. And then Rupert walks in, the brilliant Anthony Head, and she's slapped around the face with information she never thought she was going to hear. And we all have that in life, don't we? But it's just when you're working with brilliant writers like this, they can harness that in one scene. And I think that's why this show moves everyone so deeply. I mean, they play around with your emotions and ours as actors, left, right, and center.
I want to play a clip right now. We have already set up the no spoilers for season 2. Hey, if you're going to listen to this interview, we're going to spoil a little bit of stuff for season 2. So
not me, you are, Tom.
I am if you're listening to this, Hannah is going to spoil some stuff for season 2.
She's not.
No, she's not. I am. Well, I've set up that we're if you haven't watched it yet, give me 2.5 minutes. Listen to this.
Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Never gonna run around and desert you. Never gonna make you cry. Never gonna see.
Never gonna say goodbye. Never gonna tell a lie and hurt you.
The reason I play that clip is because even for people who don't have an Apple subscription, people who don't have watched Ted Lasso, that scene sort of went viral and crazy recently. The scene of you not being able to have words at your father's funeral and kind of rickrolling everybody. What was going on for you as a actor in that scene?
Well, first of all, when Jason first said that I was going to be doing Rick Astley's Never Going to Give You Up as Rebecca's father's eulogy, I was a bit like, what are you doing to me, Sudeikis? He'd already done it to me in season 1 with Let It Go, which I'd already balked at. And then he kind of left it with me for a while. And then about 3 weeks after he'd given it to me, he went, right, do what you want with it. And I was like, okay. And 3 weeks in, he went, how are you getting on with that? Do you want to change it? And I was like, you are not changing this now. Because I'd broken it down so much in my head and played with the rhythm so that it suited what she wanted to say. Because in my head, it is a love letter to her mother.
Her
really.
mother's favorite song, yeah.
Yes, it's her mother's favorite song. And it's also what she wants to say to her about how Rebecca feels about her father. So, as usual, very annoyingly, cleverly chosen by Sudeikis. What was going through my head actually doing it was, more than anything, desperately trying to hold it together, actually. And I was given a great tip when I was younger by Sir Trevor Nunn, the great Shakespearean director who I did Kiss Me, Kate and A Little Night Music for. He said, the way people lean in is if you are desperately trying to not cry and hold yourself together. And it adds something that is so heartbreaking in your body that it almost makes you become more raw and tips you further into it. By if somebody said to you, no, you're not to get emotional about it. It's very easy for an actor to be all, but to be, in my head, I was thinking, no, Rebecca doesn't want, she's got all her football players in that congregation. She doesn't want anyone to see her like that ever, because she has, a veneer to keep up that she has guarded very, very, very safely. So there were a lot of things going on in my head, if I'm perfectly honest, Tom.
But that's so interesting, that technique there, that to show true emotion, to show the true depth of what that person is feeling, to make people lean in, as you say, to try and not to cry, but cry nonetheless.
Yeah.
It reminds. I interviewed Michael Caine one time, and he said the way to. I'll get you to do your impression in just a second, but
no pressure.
He told me that in order to play drunk, you have to play someone who's hiding that they're drunk.
Absolutely. What a boss statement to make. Yes. If somebody said, "Oh, walk like you're drunk," every drunk person tries to walk like they're not drunk, don't they?
Yeah.
Same thing.
How is there's so much love between the characters on the show that I assume you're not all, when the camera goes off, yelling at one another and throwing
oh my God.
wine bottles at one another.
Have you not seen us all in interviews? We're all nauseatingly in love with each other in real life. Like to the point where I just think people might think it's fake, but we all know it isn't. We just dig the living shizzle out of each other.
You really do, hey?
I mean, we really, really do. And I think it's because we've all been knocking about quite a while in our respective careers. And 100%, there is no one person in that cast who thinks they're more important than anyone else. We are AFC Richmond, and that's that.
Does that
like our WhatsApp group, you'd find it really, really nauseating. We're like the Mutual Appreciation Society.
Does that feel unique to your career?
To this level, I suppose yes, but I've been very lucky. Like Sex Education, what a great cast they are. Krypton, Game of Thrones, all really cool people who appreciate how lucky they are and don't think of themselves as more important than the other one. I think the thing that's kind of tipped it with our Ted lot is that none of us knew what it was in the first place. And we were all just doing the best we could. And for it to have had this much success, I think we're all still a bit like, oh, okay. And even at the Emmys, when we all arrived, I could see we were all a bit nervous. My beloved Juno came over to me and was like, hi. And once we all hold hands or once we link arms or whatever, like I was so relieved when Brett Goldstein won as well. And he and I didn't let go of each other's hand all through all the press for it afterwards, because we are each other's pacifiers.
I think you said in the Emmy speech, you speak of your friend Juno, who's on the show, there is no Rebecca without Keeley. Juno plays Keeley.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. But there's no Rebecca without Keeley. There's no Rebecca without Ted. There's no Rebecca without Higgins. They are, you can't play it by yourself. You have to have the best foils to spring off. And that's why I love my theatre background, because I am 100% a team player. And the luxury we have on this is the absolute ball bouncing back to you equally. There's nobody that switches off. Like, I don't know whether your listeners know, but when you're doing the camera coverage of a scene, you do, like, you'll do an establishing wide or whatever, but then you do like your coverage or the other person's coverage or come in on a tighter shot or whatever. To have actors that don't switch off for a second when it's just your coverage and not theirs.
Oh, I understand. So there, you do a big scene where it sort of looks like a play, right? And you're all...
So say you're all there.
Yeah.
So there's 4 of you in Rebecca's office, for example. And then you'll cut away and they'll go, right, we're going to do a 2-shot of you and Higgins behind the desk. And then we're going to turn it around and we're going to shoot Ted and Keeley, Jason and Juno, from behind your head onto them. There is no part of any actor that should switch off when the camera is behind your head. You've got to give the person exactly the same as you were giving when it was on camera. And this is a brilliant show for that, people not switching off.
I never thought about that before, that when you're doing the big close-up scene, the other person could easily just start phoning it in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even if people don't think they are, you might feel there's a little bit less, and that throws you a bit. And you know the other brilliant thing about our show, bear in mind that we have so many of the key writers in the scene with you. So you've got Jason, you've got Brett Goldstein. I mean, Brendan Hunt will often finish a scene somewhere else as Coach Beard, and then suddenly he's got his cans on, his headphones, and he's on the monitor and coming in when they've shouted cut for a second, and he's pouring little directorial little bits in my ear to heighten the scene. And I've got Jason in front of me, half being Ted and half being Jason, just giving tips and encouraging me. And it's incredible.
The show means a lot to you guys, but the show meant a lot to people during this pandemic and during some of the darker moments of their lives. And I have an example of something I was going to read to you, but I thought I might ask you, can you remember a particular moment where a fan or someone who was sort of helped by the show told you something that was particularly meaningful to you?
Yes. And it's quite a weighty one. And I don't mean I hope people see it as a thing of joy. A very good friend of mine, Todd Stashwick, who was very instrumental in me being cast. He was asked by Brendan Hunt, our beloved Coach Beard and writer. He was asked if he knew anyone that could play this part. And Todd said, well, what has she got to be like? And Brendan said, and he went, well, that's Hannah Waddingham. And that's how I got in the room in the first place. Cut to Todd's great friend, Chris Ann, who is fighting her battle with cancer in LA. And he said to me, is there any way you could send her a message? Because your show, through lockdown, when she's having her cancer treatment, has changed her life and given her hope and a light at the end of the tunnel. And so myself and several other of my castmates sent her video messages during the pandemic to help her through her treatment. And still today, I had a ticket for her for our premiere that we had back at during August, which she wasn't able to come to because she was having a bad day that day. But she and I spoke video call when she was in hospital. And she said that you guys don't know what you have done for me. And to receive messages on top of that from you all saying, come on. I mean, Brett Goldstein sent her a message, effing and blinding, as Roy Kent, going, you're an effing rock star. You are an effing superstar, Chris Ann. You're going to pull through this and you're going to be just fine. And she went, you cannot know how much that has helped me. And to hear something like that is so humbling. My brain can't really compute it. And that's why I said I don't mean to bring people down or make them press or whatever. No. But that was easily the biggest thing that has happened to me thus far on this journey, to feel like you have created some sense of joy or coping mechanism for somebody just by doing your show and doing your job. It's a massive, massive privilege.
What is it about the show that you think? I mean, so much of the discourse around it is that it's so right for our times, or it's such a game changer when it comes to narrative, given its treatment of joy and vulnerability. What is it about the show?
I think perhaps people had lost their way even before the pandemic. There's a lot of kind of snippy comedy around, a lot of kind of this kind of roasting thing and thinking you're really clever if you criticize someone. And I don't know whether it's accidental or not, but it kind of kept going that way. And I certainly, for one, wasn't really feeling it. And it was kind of a bit uncool and a bit unfunny just to be kind and nice and supportive and loving and happy. And I feel like the show that Jason and the guys created, the vibe of the show, the Ted Lasso way, maybe caught people off guard and maybe made people look inwards a little bit.
I feel that way whenever I see sort of like a pushback against it. I always feel like it's sort of the kick of the horse, you know what I mean? If there's I know I'm not being very objective right now, but whenever I see that, like, is Ted Lasso too nice discourse, I always see that, like, that's the last kick of the cynical horse, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and I always think to myself, whoever's written that, I always think, oh, bless you, off you pop.
That's a lovely
Whatever.
That's a lovely perspective. Listen, I've saved the hard gotcha question for the end. So get
God.
get ready.
Yes.
It's all about to end. You had a great run. It's all about to end here right now. How are the biscuits?
Better than season 1.
I should say in season 1, Hannah's character, Rebecca, she eats a biscuit or two in every single scene, which means when you're shooting it's like...
To be fair, I did turn into... It wasn't really their fault because I decided to make her an emotional eater and therefore became like a truffle hound with the biscuits.
So Ted brings you a biscuit at the beginning of every day. Did you actually have to eat them? Do they taste okay?
Yeah, he calls it Biscuits with the Boss, and Rebecca, obviously, because she's only got him there to kind of be the puppet for her cynical, horrible plan. So she just thinks, oh God, for God's sake, this man just, no, we're not doing biscuits. Then she has one bite and her whole world implodes. And then that's the running theme for her through the show is these biscuits become her kryptonite.
So how are they? How's eating those?
They're better. They are better now. They are definitely better now because I had such a global tantrum about them being like just lumps of lard with a bit of sprinkling of salt put on them for season 1. That season 2, I don't know whether it was like having it, like putting it on old comfy cardi that's not particularly attractive, but you still like it. I don't know whether it was that or that they'd actually just made them with a lot more sugar and a lot more butter, which, as we know, even if you spread on an old shoe, would be very nice. So I don't know whether it's that or not, but they are significantly better than they were.
And and you don't take a bite of them either. So if they don't taste very good, my God, you're gulping them down, you know?
Yeah, I'm like, in fact, I made that continue. There was no reference made of it really in season 2, but I always have, if I'm in my office, I always have a biscuit on the go. And Juno even noticed that I will, decide how far into a biscuit she is depending on her mood.
I think I want to turn that into like an online game. It's so like, the mood ring.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to replace that with the mood biscuit.
Yeah, I like it, the mood biscuit.
What a joy it was to meet you.
Likewise, Tom. Thank you. And thank you for asking questions that aren't, just obvious ones. It's nice to kind of scratch the surface a bit more. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Where do you keep your Emmys, by the way, before I go?
What this?
Oh my God. So I'll say for the radio listeners, I'm staring at it right in the face. Can I see it? Wow.
She's pretty.
She is pretty.
I'll do the noise for them.
That is the sound of Hannah Waddingham's nails tapping off an Emmy. Congratulations. Lovely to talk to you.
Thank you, my friend. Take care of yourself. Hope to speak to you again.
Hannah Waddingham plays Rebecca Welton on Ted Lasso. The season finale drops today on Apple TV+.